in this lesson, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at scene managers. And in order to really understand what a scene manager does and how we can work inside of Matinee, we kind of need to get an idea of the overall process. And we talked about this briefly in the introduction section a few minutes ago. Now, the scene manager sort of lies at the heart of Matinee, if you will, and just basically acts as a container. And this container is going to contain a series of sequences, if you will. And these sequences are called actions. And then actions can contain sub-actions, a series of sequences that can happen within that action.
That's right. Yeah, it's the sub-actions act kind of like effects for that action.
Exactly. And this may seem a little bit confusing at first, and don't worry, we're going to go through it very carefully. But after a while, you're going to see it's actually a really neat setup. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this scene manager thing. First of all, a scene manager can be added into the scene the way any other actor can be added in, by simply coming up here and opening up our actor classes browser, and then coming down up under info, down to scene manager, simply select it, and then we can come in our scene, right click, and then add scene manager wherever we just clicked at. And there's the scene manager. Then we can double click it, we can open up our properties, and we can go in there and we can start making settings. But you got to be careful. Taking that approach could end up crashing Unreal, isn't that correct?
Right. Not only that, the workflow isn't as good. There's already been a tool created for this type of editing called Matinee.
Exactly. So basically what I'm trying to show you is while you can get to it as just a regular actor, this is not the desired approach for setting up a Matinee scene. So what I'm going to do is just simply come in here and go ahead and select it, delete out the scene manager. Now let me show you how we should do it. And this is through Matinee. So this is Matinee. Just get to it basically by clicking this icon over here in the toolbar and then opening up Matinee. The first thing we notice before we start actually creating anything is that across the top it's divided up into a series of tabs. We've got scenes, actions, sub-actions, and tools. Now remember, like I said just a minute ago, a scene manager is a container, okay? And it contains a series of actions. So what's going to happen is inside the scenes area right here, I can add as many scene managers as I would like. And each scene manager can have its own series of actions, okay? And each action, as I said a second ago, can have its own series of sub-actions. And tools give us some nice capabilities that we'll talk about a little bit later on, some things that can kind of speed us up a little bit. So let's go ahead and come back over here to scenes. And now up under scenes, if we drop down, you're going to notice we've got this large window right here and a blank area down at the bottom. Well, when we add a scene manager in here and we select it, we're going to be able to gain access to all of its properties down below. So let's go ahead and add a scene manager in. First thing I do want you to notice is that wherever I have my camera at is where the actual scene manager is going to be created. So I can simply click on this icon right here titled Add New Scene, pink, and now you can see a new scene manager has been added. And if I come down here into my viewport and back up a little bit, you'll see there's my scene manager icon again. So now let's go ahead and select on this, and you'll notice that, like I said a second ago, all of the properties or parameters become available down here that you can simply get into and start setting. And we're going to start talking about some of these in just a few minutes. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and set up just a real quick, very simple movie, and this will be very helpful in explaining some of these properties to you. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to, don't really worry too much about what I'm doing at the moment. I'm going to start, let's say, somewhere right about here, and let's go ahead and come over here and add an interpolation point and action. Then I'm just going to cruise all the way over here to the end, and maybe even up to about right here. Yeah, something like that. And add, actually, you know what? I'm just being picky. Right there. Okay, I've kind of got something in mind. Okay, now, look at this. Right now, you see there's this long line tie-in between the two, and there's these camera icons down here. You can see a little camera icon right there. And what does all that stuff do? Well, don't worry. We'll be getting into that in a few minutes. But basically, what we've done is we've created some interpolation points, and we have basically created a sequence of actions, okay? So now this scene manager contains two actions. And what I need to do quickly, and we'll spend more time on this in the next lesson, is come in here and give this second action a duration. So I'll come down here to time, and I don't know, Logan, what do you think, about 4 seconds maybe to get across?
Sounds good. All
right. So now with that out of the way, at this point, we can go ahead and show them what we got, wouldn't you say?
Right. You can use the preview right now, or you could set up a trigger so that in-game we could actually use this matinee sequence.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and show them the preview. So what I'm going to do is come across to this icon right over here, go ahead and click on it, and this is going to open up the matinee preview dialog. And you can resize it and all that good stuff. It actually is a viewport into the game, if you will. And when it first loads up, you'll notice this looks like a really strange view. All we need to do is simply hit play, and you'll see what we're seeing at this point is actually the camera traveling down the path that we just created a second ago. Okay?
That's right.
So, and if I was to come back in here, hit play again, you see we're going back down it. But as Logan pointed out just a second ago, if I go into Unreal Tournament right now and actually play this map, nothing's going to happen because we're not actually triggering the scene manager to put us into a matinee mode inside the game.
That's right. A scene won't start until triggered.
Exactly.
Start.
So what we need to do is go ahead and start introducing you to some of these properties so we can show you how we can hook this up. Obviously, being able to have the scene manager kick off with a broadcast event would probably be one of the most important parameters or properties to recognize. And we can find that if we go ahead and come up under events for our scene manager and come down to tag. Basically, this is where we can set whatever the tag is or whatever we're listening for to be broadcast out inside the scene. So let's call this maybe start movie. Simple enough. Now what I want to do is I want to actually add something into the scene that I can use that, let's say, an actor can run into, and it will broadcast out a start movie broadcast, and then, of course, the scene manager will hear it, and it will actually put us into a matinee mode in the game and play our actions that we've got set up inside the scene manager. Okay? So to do that, all I need to do is just come in here, and it doesn't really matter where. I'll just put it, let's say, right there. I'm just going to simply come back to my actor classes browser, and then come down up under triggers. Go ahead and expand that, and I'm just going to grab a regular trigger, come down here, right-click, add trigger here. Let's go ahead and close this browser out. I'll come into my properties, and the first thing I want to do is I'm going to come up here to advanced, and I'm going to come down to be hidden. And currently it's set to true. The reason is, if you think about it, in gameplay, that's, you're not going to really want to see that, are you, Logan?
Right, that's just its editor representation.
Exactly. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set be hidden to false, just so that I can actually stumble into it, so I don't have to feel around trying to hit it.
Right, since we're using this, if you want to think about it as for a debugging purpose, that we will just go ahead and let the actor itself be visible and very quickly be able to use it for testing our level.
All right, so now, of course, the most important thing after we've given ourselves the ability to see it is come down here and actually set the event that this trigger will broadcast out. So right here, you can see that the scene manager over here is waiting to hear start movie, or whatever, you call it anything you want. For the matinee sequence to start off, I'll just come over here to event and set this to start movie, so that this is what gets broadcast out when the player collides with this. So with that, let's go ahead and come in here and take a look at the actual map.
Sounds good.
So just a second here for it to load on up. And let's go ahead and I'm just going to move this up a little bit. There we go, so that you can see it. And let's jump into game real quick.
Play.
Okay, so, nothing too fancy, and obviously the line is gone. We don't see any sort of iconic representation in regards to the things that we've set up so far in reference to matinee. There's our trigger. Now let's see what happens the moment I hit it. Boom, look at that. Okay, so we've now put ourselves into a mode where we were viewing through a camera. You'll notice that our heads-up display, all of the heads up. Go ahead,
like your health, ammo, weapon loadout, stuff like that.
Exactly. For half a second there, I was at a complete loss for words. So I was like, heads-up display. Everybody knows what a HUD is. But basically, our heads-up display disappeared. I'm pointing that out now because in a few minutes we're going to come back to a property and talk about it. And I wanted you to be aware of it. Watch, here we are again. We're going to re-trigger this. Again, you saw for just a second our actual player over on the left-hand side. Because that is, the player, of course, is not going along for the ride or anything. We're actually following a camera that's going down this path. So let's go ahead and jump out of the game, and let's go ahead and come back into Unreal Ed. So this is what we've got set up so far. Pretty simple, right?
Right.
And it took 4 seconds to get from point A all the way down to point B. Now, with that, let's go ahead and start focusing on some of the properties. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to the Scene Manager property. The Scene Manager is going to contain, in this particular VTM lesson, the most important properties that we want to talk about. The very first one, well, actions. Well, you're not going to want to come in here and start trying to fiddle with your actions because this could be a very bad thing. We want to set our actions from up here. Okay.
Right, where you've got the full interface for dealing with actions.
Exactly. If you come in here and you try to open it up, you don't have any actions in the scene, you could end up causing Unreal Ed to crash. So be very careful. I would just avoid this area altogether and simply use actions up here, which is very nice, and we'll get to those in the next lesson. So let's go ahead and come down here to Effect. The Effect property is very important. Basically, when using a scene manager, we have the ability to use it in kind of two different states, or two types of modes, if you want to look at it that way. We have the viewport camera, which is Effect Viewport Camera. In other words, this is what you actually see when you're looking at your monitor and you're looking at the game. In other words, it's like through a camera, okay? Or we have the ability, if we want, we can come in here and affect actor. Doing this gives us the ability to take an actor and put that actor on one of these paths that we've got defined right here so that it can be moving throughout the level.
Right, which is actually really cool if you need some object to follow a specific path, because obviously being able to see the path and easily edit it is really nice for setting up something like, for example, you could put a particle emitter on it and then set up exactly where it's going to run.
Exactly. So you saw by default, when we come in here, we've got viewport camera. And we saw the camera moving along. Let's go ahead and put it on actor, and let's put something in here just to make it kind of cool. Let's show them what we're talking about.
Okay.
It's always kind of fun. As a matter of fact, let's add a mover into the scene. As a matter of fact, Logan, you want to talk to them the difference about what we can and cannot actually attach or use as an actor?
Well, pretty much anything that can move, and even some things that normally don't move. I mean, you can. It's not overly useful, but you can actually stick ammo to the path.
Exactly.
But it's pretty much anything that's not supposed to be static. Like, for example, a static mesh cannot be put on for the simple fact that it's meant to stay in one place, to be put in the T&L cache for the video card and stuff like that.
Exactly. So let's go ahead and add a mover. So what we need to do is go ahead and come up here and open up apps. Let's go ahead and get over here to our static meshes. There we go. And let's go ahead and open up a Bad and Hardware is good. And let's go ahead and come over here and switch over to Miscellaneous is good. And let's come down here to Circle Great. Yeah, that'll look like a good little thing that we can move along the path and perhaps even jump on. So let's just go ahead and come over here, and actually we need to add this in as a mover. Okay, like Logan just said a second ago, if I was to come in and add it in as a static mesh, that's not going to work for us. That's not. If you do add a static mesh in, you say use that actor, and then you go into game and you trigger it, you're going to see it's not going to work. Okay, so let's go ahead and add this in as a mover. And now what I want to do, we can go ahead and close this as a matter of fact, is simply come over here and move. Let's go ahead and select this guy here, and there we go, and move him on down. And where are we at? And a little bit lower. And let's go ahead and scale him down. He's pretty large at the moment. And let's scale him down about half. So we'll set this down to about 0.5, 0.5, and 0.5. Okay, that's good. And move it back up just a little bit. And I'll go ahead and use my top view up here just to kind of line this up back here at the very beginning. And let's just go ahead and hit W to hide all of our static meshes. Well, that's not just necessarily a good thing right there, because we're going to hide our mover as well. All right, so let's just kind of zoom in here. So somewhere right about there. Maybe up just a little bit. And what I want to do is I want to take my trigger, put my trigger up on top of this so that my player could then come along, jump up on top, which would hit the trigger, and then this piece I want it to actually start moving then. Basically, it's going to use the scene manager, or the scene manager is going to control it to make it move along this path. So we can go ahead and just take this guy here and then move him up, and we'll just move him back here over. So, yeah, right about there looks pretty good. Anything you want to add to this, Logan?
That right there should work.
We just need to make sure we add it in over here. So we need to select it, come over here to, you can see how right now we're saying affect the actor. We need to say, okay, what actor are we going to affect? So we'll simply come in here and hit use. Okay.
So now yeah, that should be set up. You can now trigger that mover to be controlled by the scene manager, or the actions underneath that scene manager.
Exactly. And let's see, one other thing to add in, just thinking about it at the moment, is if your mover had any keys on it, say goodbye to them. While that's being controlled by the scene manager, there are no keys that the mover is going to be going through. It's basically just going to be following the path set forth by the scene manager.
That's right.
So let's go ahead and let's check this one out. So we'll just go back in and play the map. But we got such a hard job, don't we? Just play games all day. I love it. Okay, so let's go ahead and come back in.
Play.
And we'll just come on down. And let's see how interesting this is. Look at this. Woohoo! Alright, lots of fun, right? Well, it took me from point A to point B. And one of the things you may be wondering is, okay, well, a regular mover would do this. True. But in the next lesson, when we start studying actions and talking about all the different types of properties that are available, one of the things that we're going to be looking at is how we can basically change our path to Bezier, which gives us the ability then to make us curve all over the place.
Right, and then not only curve, but still have the visual representation of where that path is going. So if you needed a mover to follow an exact path, and then even later when we get into sub-actions and control the orientation or which way it's looking, we can get into some advanced orientation, which would be really hard to pull off with normal mover keys.
Absolutely. So now let's go ahead and look at another setting, B looping. Right now it's false. If we set this to true, what's going to happen when we hit our very last action and we complete it? We'll simply cycle back and start again. Okay? So let's go ahead and I'm going to come down here, grab this guy. Let's move on over a little bit. There we go.
Try to hit the center of the line.
There we go. Yeah, I was working on it. And move this guy up to about here. Actually, maybe down a little bit. There we go. So now we have a nice way to get up to the top, and it should continue looping over and over and over. Let's go ahead and jump in and see what this does, just so you can see what looping does. And loading up game, and we're now in, and here we go.
Play.
All right, so let's go ahead and run back down here. And jump up. And we're off for the ride, but what happened? Boy, that thing was just flying right along. Well, now,
probably caught your head on the.
Yeah, I would say so. And the problem we've got here is, and we're not going to be able to jump down on top of that.
Yeah, it's starting a little bit high. It is in fact looping.
It is looping, that is for sure. And I'm determined to get in here and make this thing possible.
Good one.
So now we can just simply take it up to the top, and there we go. But yeah, the point is the fact that you can see that it is indeed looping over and over and over. Okay? So now we're able to make it go at an angle like such. Let's go ahead and exit out of here, come back inside Unreal Ed. And again, just keep in mind that we can come in here, we can put way more than just 2 points in there, 2 interpolation points. We could actually have this thing snaking all over the place. If we wanted to come in and create a roller coaster, this could be all sorts of fun.
Yeah, you can make something really interesting like this.
Okay. So let's see, what else can we go ahead and talk about real quick. The cinematic view. All right, let's go ahead at this point, and let's take this back from affecting an actor. Let's go ahead and go back over to viewport camera. Okay, so coming back down now, let's go ahead and talk about the hide, the heads-up display. Right now it's set to true. We found that if you go in there and set it to false and then rerun everything inside the game, basically you're not going to see the heads-up display. It's going to stay hidden at all times.
Right. It doesn't really seem to have much of an effect. It's but again, if it's a cut sequence type system, you usually don't have the HUD around because it's kind of like being out of body or from a different view.
Exactly. And if you were controlling the an actor like we were just showing a second ago, boy, you're going to be playing the game still. So, I mean, you don't want to lose your heads up. At that point, there's no control whatsoever because you're not doing a camera thing. It's not through a viewport, if you will.
Right, it's something else is moving, and you still have full control of your own view.
Exactly. Okay, so cruising on down, the B cinematic view is just an ability to give us a letterbox type effect, okay? So if we were to come in here and set this to true, and then I come back up here and I open my preview again, watch what's going to happen when I play. Woo, cinematic effect, okay? Which can be very cool, of course, and we will be using this when we start creating our own scene. So again, just so you can see, letterbox effect.
Very nice.
Okay, so moving on to the next thing. We've got event end, and event start. Logan?
Well, what that will allow you to do is trigger or broadcast an event when the scene either starts or ends. This can be very useful if you need to kick something off as soon as this movie starts. And while that alone, I mean, you're using an event anyway to start the whole movie. But this, as you'll see when the tag real quick here is the fact that scene managers can trigger other scene managers. Then you could have that next scene manager start an event to keep things all synced up with different scenes.
Exactly. Or if you wanted to fire something every time it came to an end, even if you had looping, you still hit that very last action. You can broadcast out and start back again. So just basic things that we can set up. And we're going to be talking more about triggering things a little bit later on in this VTM. Finally, coming down, the last thing that we're going to talk about is going to be the next scene tag. Okay, and the next scene tag is, Logan?
Well, that's what I was saying before, when one scene can trigger another scene to start. What that'll do is if you were to have, say, like movie 2, and you want a movie 2 to begin right after the end of start movie, you could put movie 2 in the next scene tag. And that way, as soon as start movie finished, it would go ahead and trigger off movie 2 right then.
Right. Basically, what you're saying then is if I wanted to, I could come up here and I could duplicate that scene manager. And in this scene manager, if I was to come back up here into the events category and come down and we wanted to call this, give it a name of movie 2, sticking with the naming that you're using, and then come back up here to start movie, and then come down here and say next scene tag, movie 2, like such. And then let's say we came over here to movie 2, and perhaps movie 2 was a, let's say it was going to control an actor, this particular guy. So at this point then what's going to happen is we should be able to watch the movie play through once, and as soon as it hits it, it's going to trigger the object to start moving along.
Right, but you might want to take looping off because looping's kind of doing that anyway.
True.
Starting it.
So let's go ahead and
take looping off of both of them real quick, so that way you'd have a scene that would look like it's playing through twice and then ending, instead of continuing to loop.
Come into that, and let's go. Okay, and into the game.
Play.
And time to trigger. And as you can see, there we are through viewport. There we are writing the object. Okay?
Very nice.
All right, so, and as I just got knocked off. So you can see now how we've gone in there and we've actually taken 2 scene managers, we've taken 1 scene manager and basically chained it to a second one, or so that we're triggering a second one, if you will.
Right, if you had to use lots of scene managers throughout your movie to control either different camera points or objects that had to be controlled by Matinee, you could keep them all running one after another by using the next scene tag.
Exactly. And we'll go ahead and wrap this up real quickly by saying a couple of last minute things. You can see, of course, the name of each of the scene managers. You can also see the total time, which is basically all of the actions times added together. A couple of other things. You saw how I could simply duplicate my selected scene manager. I can delete a scene manager easily. I can go in here and reorganize these if I'd like to for organizational purposes. And we've already taken a look at the preview window. So what do you think, Logan? Does this pretty much do a decent job at covering just the scene manager in general?
Right. How to work with the scene manager and what its properties are.
Okay. So in the next lesson, we'll start breaking down the actions a little bit and getting a little bit more serious about things.